The control panel, this bar of settings sitting above your document window, is a powerful quick formatting tool. It lets us quickly and precisely apply a number of common functions within InDesign CS6. Since it's context sensitive, it automatically switches to different layouts that correspond to what type of element you have selected. So we essentially have 3.5 different layouts for the control panel. This unit will cover how the object layout for the control panel works. To illustrate this, click somewhere outside of our selection area, outside the page, so absolutely nothing is selected. Then, move your cursor in the middle of the text block and click on it to make sure that it is selected. Remember, our selection tool is used to select things, move things, and adjust the amount of space that things take up. That's all the selection tool does, and only the selection tool does that. When you click on the text block, then look at the control panel, you'll see that there are a group of settings here that are relevant to selecting object frames and manipulating their size and positioning. Going from left to right, what we'll call the object layout for your control panel contains the following: a reference point proxy that allows you to select any corner of your selected elements, the center point between any two corners, or the exact center of your selection. This is handy in that it lets you adjust and move elements with the control panel with precise numerical control. Let's show that by clicking in the upper left-hand corner of that control panel proxy and using the first column of edit boxes, the X and Y coordinate edit boxes, to move our text block. Before we do that, press the keyboard shortcut Command 0 if you're working on the Mac, or Control 0 if you're working on a Windows PC, to zoom your page out to what's known as the Fit in Window view. With that selected, now double-click in the number in the X coordinate edit box and change that number to 4. Hit the Tab key and notice that the text frame moves over to the right. Type 5 in the Y coordinate. You don't have to fill in the inch part. InDesign will do that by itself. And hit the Tab key. And you'll notice that that type actually moves down. To put it back smack in the middle of our 8.5 by 11 page, click the center dot in our proxy. Then change the X coordinate to 4.25. Hit the Tab key. Notice that it moves to the left. And change the Y coordinate to 5.5 and hit the Tab key. You notice this moves the text block back up and to the left into the center of our page. The second column of edit boxes are the width and height edit boxes. With your text block still selected with the selection black arrow tool, click on the top center reference point of your proxy. Then change the width edit box by double-clicking in it and typing in the number 8. Hit the Tab key. Then change the height of it to 6 inches, once again hitting the Tab key. Notice that the text frame that contains your type grew horizontally in both directions, but the increased height came from the top down. You may also notice that the type size itself didn't change at all. Your reference point here in the proxy is literally the determining factor for where your control panel transformations come from. Since the default for the height and width link here is broken, that means that we can change each of these dimensions independently. To bring ourselves back to center, the long way around, click on the center of the proxy. Then change the width to 4 inches, hit the Tab key, change the height to 4 inches. You should see, after we hit the Tab key again, that there's still a little bit of extra space beneath the bottom of the text frame. So we can see what we're working with a little more closely. I'm going to go Control 1 on the Windows PC platform, or Command 1 if you're working on the Mac, to bring whatever I had selected back into 100% view. Let me offer you an important housekeeping rule. Text frames should never be larger than necessary to hold the type that they're intended to contain. Move your cursor down to the bottom center anchor point of your text frame. Then hold the mouse button down and drag the bottom of the text frame into the middle of the last paragraph of type like this. We've intentionally made this text frame too small to show all the type placed in it, and we know that by this red box over here with the little plus in it down to the lower right of our text frame. Let's go back to our bottom center anchor point and drag it down far enough that we know there's enough room for all the type, and release the mouse button. You notice that that box down to the lower right of the text frame is blue once again and has nothing in it. That means that all of the text is placed can be seen on screen now. Take your cursor, put it back to that bottom center, and bring it up just to the bottom of that last line of type. Now, instead of using the control panel to center the text block, we're going to let InDesign CS6's Smart Guides help do us manually. Put your cursor roughly in the center of the text block, then hold down the mouse button and drag the block towards the center of the frame. When you get close to one center measure or the other, like I have here with the vertical guide, a bright red Smart Guide pops up on screen to let us know we've hit the mark. If you're not lucky enough to hit the right spot in both dimensions at the same time, move your text block along the first Smart Guide until you hit the second. So in this case, I'm going to move it up to 5.5. And when I hit the right spot, the gray number box by my cursor shows that X at 4.25 inches and Y at 5.5 inches. Now I can release the mouse button and it'll be centered on the page. Make sure that your center reference point is still selected in the proxy and that the text block is selected by the selection tool. Now we'll move our cursor to the third column of edit boxes on your control panel, the scale percentage edit boxes. Notice in this case, the link button is selected. That means that when one edit box is selected, the second one will be filled with the same information and that they will be scaled proportionately. Change either one of the scale percentage edit boxes to 150, then hit the Tab key. You should see two things. One is that both the text frame and the type inside it are now 50% larger. The other one is that even though we entered a value of 150% into one of the scale percentage edit boxes, the values have changed back to 100%. So while the values you entered to make scale percentage changes with these edit boxes will be done faithfully, the reported result, especially if you do this multiple times to scale the same element, will not appear to be. The fourth column of edit boxes in our control panel are the rotation and shear transformation edit boxes. Make sure that your text block is selected with the selection tool, then double-click in the rotation edit box and enter a value of 45, then hit the Tab key. Notice that both the text block, here in the center of your screen, and the proxy to the left of your control panel have rotated 45 degrees as well. Also, you'll see that there's a little example of the letter P at the edge of these transformation tools that shows it's rotated 45 degrees to a diagonal as well. Clicking on the two circular arrows just to the right of that rotate edit box allow you to rotate your selection either clockwise or counterclockwise by 90 degrees. With your text block selected, make sure that the center reference point is still selected in the control panel proxy, then click the rotating arrow that points right to spin the block 90 degrees clockwise. If you do that, demonstrated right here, you'll see that the value in your rotation edit box will show minus 45 degrees. That's the easy way to tell InDesign to rotate something clockwise. Use the minus sign and enter the percentage you're looking for. The other way would be to take the full 360 degrees of rotation. Then subtract the amount of clockwise rotation that you're looking for. So doing the math in my head, that translates into 360 degrees minus 45 degrees for a value of 315 degrees. Or you can just enter the value of minus 45 degrees, whichever one's easier for you. Let's set our text back on even keel by double-clicking in the rotation edit box, entering a value of 0, and hitting the tab key to level everything out. The bottom of the fourth column of edit boxes is the shear edit box. It lets you set a predetermined amount of skew to selected objects. Make sure that the center of your proxy is still selected, then change the value in the shear edit box to 15 and hit the tab key. You'll notice that the text frame and the type inside it have been slanted to the right 15 degrees. You'll also see that little example of a P that sits in the center of the screen is slanted the same way. We've demonstrated this point, so let's return the setting to 0 by double-clicking in that shear box, entering 0, and hitting the tab key to square everything up again and get rid of the slant. The reflection buttons, just to the right here, allow us to flip selections either horizontally or vertically from the proxy reference point. Make sure that your text frame is still selected with the selection tool and that the proxy reference point is in the center. Then click the Flip Horizontal button. That's the one with the arrow going from left to right. This gives us the impression of reading type through the backside of a glass plate or in a mirror. Click that Flip Horizontal button again to flip it back. Now try the Flip Vertical button to see what it does. Flips that type upside down and flip it back. Notice the little P in the proxy changes the same way that the text block does. One last thing before we finish here. We can set borders around selected objects too. With our text frame selected, go to the Options box with a thick line right over here. Click on the down-pointing triangle just to the right of that line and select the dashed line option. That puts a dashed line border all the way around our text frame. But you'll notice that nothing has changed. That's because there's a line set around every element, and by default it's set at 0 points. Click on the down-pointing triangle to the right of the Thickness edit box and change that value from 0 to 6 points. Now you should see a thick dotted line around your text frame. There are other ways to apply strokes to InDesign elements that we'll use later in this InDesign course. We've hit the highlights of what's available with the control panel's object layout. In the next unit, we'll talk about the other 2.5 layouts for our control panel, which all involve working with type.